Hello and welcome to the Consistency Project podcast. My name is Patrick Cummings. As always, I am here with E.C. Sinkowski. Every week on the show, we aim to simplify the science of nutrition, health, and fitness, cutting through the noise to focus on the principles and practices that will help you perform better, feel better, and, of course, live better. Thank you so very much for tuning into the show. Greetings to you, E.C.
Greetings.
Greetings to you.
Are we landing from Mars?
We could be. This week, we're going to talk about exercise and its profound impact on our health. We're going to explore how physical activity benefits us beyond just weight loss and muscle gain, talk about the science behind myokines and their role in promoting overall well-being. And I think lastly, maybe we're going to talk about whether or not you believe, in fact, that exercise is medicine. Where did this idea come from? Let's do a little background.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've talked a little bit about the fact that exercise is important before.
A couple of times.
We've certainly addressed it from gain muscle, lose weight.
Yep.
Got to get those clicks.
Yep.
Exercise helps that. But I think really what this podcast is about is highlighting why exercise is so important to your health, regardless of those weight and body composition changes. But before we get into all of the effects of exercise that are independent of weight, I do like to remind people that there is a point where weight and health are inextricably linked. Meaning sometimes in the media, you'll just hear people say like weight doesn't matter, and that's incorrect. Like there is a point at which they are related. Now, we don't all need to have six-pack abs. We don't need to be all model thin, but there is some point where extra weight is detrimental to your health. And, you know, again, staying really simple here, we've certainly talked about it before, but just briefly, the reason why your weight is affecting your health at some level is that when we consume the food, all of the molecules in the food have to go somewhere. The carb molecules, the fat molecules, protein, magnesium, calcium. After absorption, the body has to process those molecules and send them to their relevant destinations. And when we eat in excess, typically, again, carb and fat molecules in excess, as we talked about recently on the insulin resistance podcast, the body has to do something with them. And they often end up in fat molecules, as we discussed, but they can also stay in circulation longer. That's why we have that high fasting blood sugar or high triglycerides fat or even high cholesterol. And when they're high, they not only stay high in circulation, but they can also end up places where they shouldn't be. We mentioned non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This is where fat starts to accumulate in the liver, not necessarily from excess alcohol consumption, but actually excess caloric consumption. And so I know I used that scientific term before, I'm going to use it again here, that these extra molecules can really muck up the system. I like to think about it as almost like roads and highways. It's much easier to get around and get things done when the cars are on the road. Conversely, when there's a lot of cars on the road, you can't get anywhere. And so the body's sort of like that all of these extra molecules can be interfering with normal functioning. We don't want to forget that there is some point at which weight is related to health, and why reducing weight, regardless of the diet you follow, can have some positive effects on health. Okay, great. I just had to keep that out there because I don't want people to think that weight doesn't matter. Now, in addition to that, exercise does have these positive effects regardless of weight. So if we were to take two people who had, let's say, had 50 pounds to lose, one exercises and one doesn't, the person who exercises better off for their health. And that's what we really want to highlight here. Why would that be the case?
Got it. So let's maybe just jump right in. Let's start talking a little bit about those non-aesthetic benefits to exercise.
Yeah. Myokines. Contracting muscles release these molecules called myokines.
Yep.
And they're these small proteins. And guess what? They're important in cell signaling. And I think, you know, it's so easy to think about muscle as just this sort of either aesthetic thing or like, cool, it helps me do more squats or pull-ups, all that stuff. But in reality, these signaling molecules, we've got over 650 of them. They're released when we have contracting muscle. And different ones are released from different muscle types. So we, like slow twitch fibers, fast twitch muscle fibers, different myokines are released, which helps start to explain, okay, why would cardio exercise have different effects than resistance exercise in terms of our health? Now, we don't actually know what all these 650 myokines are doing. I saw a paper where we really only know what about 5% or about 35 of these myokines are doing, so we don't totally have the full picture on their power yet. But they're typically elevated for up to about 60 minutes after exercise, might come back to baseline about 180 minutes after baseline. And there's going to be some variety not only in the types of release based on the muscle fibers, but also how intense is your activity, how long is it, all of that stuff. But as I mentioned, these are signaling molecules, and some of that signaling is going to be signaling to the muscle itself. Like if you just did a hard training session and you need to rebuild the tissue to a stronger level to withstand the stress, myokines are going to be involved with that. Some of the signaling is going to be related to using energy, making sure that we have the carbohydrate or the fat around for the muscle to be able to continue to contract. But then some of these myokines also are signaling in terms of crosstalk. They're going to be talking to the brain, telling it what to do, fat cells, bone, liver, gut, pancreas, among other organs. It's sending out signals, hey, go do this in those places. So they really have the power to control actions at other sites beyond just the muscles. And so, one of the podcasts we talked about recently was insulin resistance. Myokines can actually help make a cell more insulin sensitive by increasing the number of glucose transporters. So even if a person doesn't lose weight, they potentially can get some of that glucose out of circulation and into cells where it would be less damaging, right? And so potentially we don't have weight loss, but we might have less complications in terms of blood vessel damage. Good thing. Another example might be in heart disease, which we talk about all the time. It's one of our major chronic diseases. Myokines have a role in strengthening the heart. That is, myokines actually can dictate whether or not the heart rebuilds to a stronger muscle because the heart's a muscle, or whether the muscle gets sort of reorganized into more of abnormal growth or abnormal structures. And we find that there's this really close relationship between heart failure and muscle wasting. Some of the crosstalk that's happening between the regular muscles and the heart is really the driving factor of heart failure progressing. A weakening heart can't supply the muscles with the oxygen and nutrients they need to contract. But then when there's not these contracting muscles to produce the myokines, the lack of myokines are now shaping the heart function and the heart's ability to then further pump blood and those nutrients, right? So it's this terrible sort of feedback loop that we find at the heart, Jesus, pun intended, related to heart failure and myokines.
Very good fun. I feel like myokines have not nearly been given the respect they deserve based on everything
Correct.
you just said. Because I don't know that I've ever heard the name before or the word before.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy how many different ways exercise improves health. And this is just some of the understanding why it's so powerful, because they have this ability to affect so many different organs. In fact, one of the papers I was reading, it's like, they could never develop a pill that's as powerful, because how are you going to develop a pill that hits all systems of the body like these do? Yeah.
Fascinating. Any other evidence or any evidence for conditions that we would think we would think are less affected by exercise or aren't as affected by exercise as in fact maybe they are, things like, mental health, cognition, longevity, anything else that might be worth mentioning?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an almost obvious leap to be like, okay, exercise benefits the heart, right? Like it's really not that hard to kind of get that leap. But yeah, there's, like I said, it's affecting so many other organs. Yeah, so one of the ways that it can really affect mental health and cognition as a first example is because myokines may increase something called BDNF, and that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's a protein in the brain that plays an important role in learning and memory, like the plasticity of the brain to be able to learn and retain new things. And so this is how we can then make the leap to say that exercise is important to prevent cognitive decline or prevent dementia. And it also may be the similar mechanism for anxiety and depression, because BDNF, that same molecule, is particularly active in the hippocampus part of the brain. And again, that's where short-term memories are, but that's also where we have a lot of emotional processing. And so when we increase this BDNF, it helps with the memory, but then it also may be helping on the anxiety and depression front, the emotional health front. And that has nothing to do with weight. And it's just because of these signaling molecules that are coming from muscular contractions, which is just so interesting. Another example would be osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis is the wear and tear arthritis, and exercise is often given as one of the prescriptions for it. And it's kind of counterintuitive, because if you have this wear and tear of a joint, I think intuitively you would think, okay, let's rest. But we find that exercise can help reduce pain and also preserve function. And why might that be? It might be because of these myokines, right? So myokines released from the muscle can actually improve bone density and also can improve bone quality which then has this downstream effect on the structure and strength of the cartilage. And so, of course, that can help preserve the joint. And we also believe that these myokines have the ability to decrease the inflammation at the joint, decrease these inflammatory signals, which we can really say is what causes the pain. And so it might be the myokine release from the muscles that are actually helping improve the structure of the painful joint and also decrease the amount of pain around the joint.
We keep using this word exercise. I kind of feel like we should talk about this a little bit. Can we talk about what kind of exercise you're talking about, or the science seems to show is maybe more beneficial than others if it goes that far? And then of that exercise, whatever that exercise might look like, what is the right amount?
I do like the CDC guidelines for this. I think they're pretty good. I mean, I actually think they align pretty well with a lot of people in the CrossFit community or functional fitness community. But the CDC recommends to have at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity per week. Or if you do something that's called more vigorous intensity, that would be more 75 to 150 minutes per week. And what that averages out to is 30 to 60 minutes of moderate intensity 5 times a week, or 15 to 30 high intensity, vigorous intensity sessions 5 times a week, right? So that's kind of the baseline for aerobic fitness. And then in addition to that, they also recommend 2 strength training sessions. So, I know I've said before what I believe in or what I try to do is kind of 2 more strength sessions a week, 2 more high intensity sessions, and then 2 more cardio sessions. Now it's kind of 1 to 2 because I end up working out 5 times a week. And I think that's a great, nice spread. And it's very similar to what this is saying. Evidently, and I didn't actually catch this till looking back at the recommendations this time, but they also recommend that for adults over 65 to do activities that really focus on balance and coordination. And I think that's great. And I would extend that to any age. And I understand why they do it for over 65. They're really trying to prevent falls. But I think that muscle coordination and balance stuff is really beneficial. And the more you develop that skill now, the more of the buffer that you have later in life. And so this can be things like pickleball, got to get that in there. Can be stuff like salsa dancing, stuff like that. Anything that has this sort of movement where it's not so scripted and not so controlled is really great for balance and coordination. But anyway, I think those recommendations are great baselines. And with that being said, I always like to remind people that all exercise is better than none. So let's say that I said 5 15 to 30 minute high intensity sessions. Let's say that you can only do 3 per week. Okay, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if that's the phrase, because you can only do 3, only in quotes. You're always going to do as much exercise as you can, trying to work up towards these volumes, knowing that all exercise is better than none. We don't need to perfectly hit the CDC recommendations to see any benefit from them. So again, all exercise is better than none. And then within that all exercise is better than none, I really encourage people to really think about challenging yourself. It doesn't mean you have to do a 1 rep max every day. It doesn't mean that you have to do your 100% sprint pace every day, but you want to exercise with the intent to get better. And I am willing to bet that that's where a lot of the benefit of the exercise is it's not just going through the motions, it's trying to challenge yourself in some way. And that could even be, again, pickleball, learning a new skill. It doesn't always have to be, lifting heavy weights. Is more than those guidelines better? There might be some continued decreased risk with a little bit more exercise, but it is going to level off at some point. Where that is, we don't exactly know. And I would really argue if you're already hitting all of these sort of metrics, 5 days a week, good amount of cardio, good amount of strength, playing some sport, hey, go worry about something else. Look at the nutrition, look at your sleep, figure out some community activity to get involved with. Like, you're done worrying about the exercise front.
Personal question for you. When you play pickleball, is it more moderate or vigorous?
Oh man, some of these
what category do you get to put these in?
Depends what the rating is and what group I'm in. But some of them I would put in vigorous for sure. And I go for it too. I'm willing to sprint for stuff at the back of the court or, so I'll go for it. So yeah, I'm going to say vigorous. And
do you practice pickleball, or is every time you go pickleball, you just play games? It's just
right now it's twice a week. I just go and play games. It's not that I would call that my practice. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so tease this at the front. I think maybe we're going to tease it with a title. Thoughts on whether exercise is in fact medicine?
So I think this phrase came out of the American College of Sports Medicine in 2007. I think they were the ones that were really coining this phrase, exercise is medicine. And it reminds me of the quote that's always attributed to Hippocrates, which is, let food be thy medicine.
Yep.
I don't
Let pickleball be thy medicine. That's
right. That one. Okay. Yes. No. I have to say, I don't really love either of the taglines. I think it's obvious. Hope, cross the fingers. Anyone listening to this podcast for at least one episode knows that I believe diet and exercise is incredibly powerful. I believe it not only can prevent disease, but I also think it can reverse disease in some cases. But that's sort of the rub. It's in some cases. I think everyone should eat right and exercise because there are benefits to your health, to your quality of life by doing so. But even if everyone followed the recommendations that I put out for nutrition and exercise to a T, even if everyone did that, even if they achieved all a healthy weight range, we would still have people with heart disease, cancer, depression, osteoarthritis, and on and on and on. There would be less people affected by those conditions, but there would still be people with those conditions. And so some of the problem I have with phrases like exercise is medicine or food is medicine is because I think it can be used to then try to discount some of the conventional medicine treatments that are out there. You know, I could be talked into phrases like exercise can be a form of medicine. Food
way
can be
less
a form
pippy.
of medicine. Yeah, they're way less catchy. They're not, not as clickable. People aren't going to be like, wow, that's a really great, platform to run on. But that's how I see them. Like, I see them as ways that could be therapeutic, but not in all cases. And I think what happens, as we've talked about so much in kind of the wellness industry, is there's this belief that natural is always better, and that you could have people turning down conventional medicine cancer treatments that could be life-saving because they think that they're just going to do it with diet. And that's really devastating. And that's why I like to push back that, yes, I believe they're very powerful. Yes, I think there's benefits to everybody. Whether or not they'll be therapeutic to everybody in all cases is a different story. So that's a big reason. The second reason I wouldn't want to say exercise is medicine or nutrition is medicine is I don't want those scopes to be regulated just to doctors. If you call food medicine and if you call exercise medicine, then you're moving it into the doctor's scope, in my opinion, or could be then regulated in the doctor's scope, right? I think we all know that most doctors don't get much nutrition direct training unless they seek it out. And they definitely don't get fitness training. I mean, I don't know that any of my past MD doctors could coach me on the squat, right, or the pull-up. And that's not a jab. It's just not where their training nor their scope has been. Yep. And I also don't think that we want to make, let's say, personal trainers or CrossFit coaches have to go to medical school to have this great service, right? So, I get worried about that because I wouldn't want certain scopes to be under their purview only. I mean, I guess if there was a case where we got to the point in the research where we knew, okay, we have to elevate this myokine and it has to be done in this type of manner for this level of duration, that maybe that could become more prescriptive from the doctor, but I still would want somebody with more exercise experience to step in and then actually prescribe the workouts and all of that stuff, right? And so, yeah, that stuff kind of worries me. I think there's a lot of services that other people can provide that's not MD. So all in all, I don't love those phrases, and it's not to take away from the power of exercise or nutrition. It's simply to recognize that there are going to be other parts to therapeutic solutions, and that there also can be other professions that contribute to helping people with diet and exercise that aren't under the medicine umbrella right now.
Yeah, it seems like trying to force simple into a place that simple doesn't need to be.
Totally.
Right? And I think I love your point about this over obsession with natural is always better. And I think anywhere we can pull that apart and at least try to insert a bit of nuance, I think is useful and helpful, because it gets you, it stops you from thinking about these things in so black and white terms. And I think when we think about these things in black and white terms is where we ultimately run into trouble, because we will hit a wall somewhere.
Totally. And, it's just funny though. Can you ever see it being really celebrated as a phrase? Like, exercise can be a form of medicine. Like, you see why it doesn't become the tagline though, but it's more true.
Yep. It's like selling fruits and vegetables. You see, you're back
World's
at it. Worst marketing job.
Back at it. Well, we keep
you
trying.
To sell bananas and apples and going to bed on time. Can you please make this sexy for us?
We're working on it.
You're working on it. All right. Thank you, C. That was great. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Thank you for your ratings, for your reviews. Thank you for sharing the show with your friends and your cousins and your colleagues. We appreciate it when we see them. EC and I will be back for a brand new episode of The Consistency Project next week.